Imagine this. You're having lunch at a cafe in Paris, enjoying a glass of wine, but it's not the fancy wine you paid for. You've been scammed. It turns out this happens more often than we realize because apparently wine fraud is rife in the French capital and tourists are usually the victims. Cafes have been caught doing this, covertly pouring cheap alternatives in place of the premium wines that customers paid for. And if this is appalling, let me tell you, it gets worse. Some cafes collect leftover wine, they put it in a single bottle and then serve it during happy hours. This is a not so happy finding of a recent investigation. So what's behind this wine crime? And if you visit France, how can you avoid being duped? Here's a report.
A trip to France doesn't get more French than wine. Whether it is a glass for the good times or a sip to challenge your palate, wine is an essential part of French culture, politics, and society. It is the way into a French person's heart. So, wine has found its way into the itinerary of almost every tourist visiting Paris. But what if the pricey plunk is not worth the cost? Quite literally. Have you heard of repotting? It is a technique that involves switching out the wine a customer has ordered with the contents of a more budget-friendly bottle. This may sound appalling, but it is exactly what many Parisian cafes have been caught doing with tourists, often being the prime victims. Recently, a French newspaper conducted an investigation. It sent 2 sommeliers to cafes in Paris to get a taste of deception. The experts pretended to be tourists. They ordered wine by the glass. And what they received was shocking. A pour of Chablis or Sancerre, which costs about $10, was substituted for a Sauvignon, which was the cheapest wine on the menu, costing about $6. When the investigators complained about this, the waiter brought another glass of the wrong wine. According to the report, such scams are rife in Paris, especially in tourist hotspots. Waiters covertly pour cheap wine in place of the premium glasses paid for by customers. And it gets worse. Sometimes they put leftover wine in a single bottle and serve it during happy hours. Waiters at restaurants and bars have confirmed this practice. They say that it is widespread, and it happens for a range of reasons. Bosses often encourage this wine fraud to maximize profits. Waiters sometimes want to avoid opening expensive bottles, which can spoil if left open for long, and tourists rarely discover the trick. This may sound like mastermind manipulation to cut costs, but if found out, restaurants will have to pay the price. In France, cheating customers over wine is punishable by law. It comes with 3 years in prison and a fine of about $34,000. That said, it is hard to impose. French authorities have been fighting wine fraud for centuries now. Inspectors check serving practices regularly, but their resources are limited. And there are more than 60,000 restaurants, cafes, and bars in Paris alone. So, if you are planning a trip to Paris, how can you be more careful during wine o'clock? You can insist on having wine poured from the bottle in front of you, with the label visible, as is required by law. After all, being cheated out of high-end wine doesn't just hurt one party. Experts say that the repotting scam rebounds on the restaurants and wine producers as well. It spoils the image of fine wine and often pushes customers to order less of it. So the disappointment goes both ways. Especially when wine consumption is falling the world over. France is one of the key global producers of wine, but last year, 3.6% less wine was consumed in country. So the repotting scam may save cost, but it also leaves a bad taste at a time when wine is already in the red.